Jack Weston, a wealthy billionaire, hurls hot coffee and scornful words at a waitress, simply doing her job. But in mere seconds, karma strikes back, tearing down his pristine reputation and forcing him to face consequences he never anticipated. Will he find redemption, or is this just the beginning of his reckoning? Before we dive into this powerful story, let us know where you're watching from, and if you enjoy stories of unexpected transformations, don't forget to subscribe. Jack Weston is a well-known name among the elite, a powerful billionaire famous for his flashy appearance and sophisticated style. He's often referred to as the philanthropic hero of the wealthy, a man who consistently donates millions to charitable foundations, attends charity auctions, and doesn't hesitate to hand over large checks signed with his own name. However, all of this is merely a carefully crafted facade that Jack has maintained for years. Beneath the glamour lies a cold, demanding person who insists on absolute perfection from everyone around him and tolerates no deviation in his plans. One morning, as the sunlight streamed through the windows of his luxurious penthouse, Jack started his day with a packed schedule of meetings and events. From the moment he woke up, he was annoyed to discover that his personal assistant, the one tasked with organizing everything, had canceled his morning meeting for personal reasons. Jack stared at the message on his phone, his eyes narrowing with irritation. He thought to himself that no one had the right to ruin his meticulously planned schedule, no matter the reason. After summoning a new assistant, Jack encountered yet another problem. A custom-made suit he had ordered for an upcoming charity gala was damaged. The seam was misaligned, making the outfit look far from the perfection he demanded. The tailor apologized and promised to fix it, but Jack couldn't tolerate the delay and shortcomings. He reprimanded the tailor in a disdainful tone, not caring that his voice echoed through the glass walls of the penthouse. As his morning routine continued to be interrupted, Jack felt his stress levels rising, and anger simmered within him. He looked at his reflection in the mirror, adjusting his tie meticulously. A composed, powerful, and flawless Jack Weston stared back at him from the other side of the glass, but all he could see was a growing sense of irritation. His mind filled with questions and worries. How could a day start off this terribly? Feeling the spacious, lavish penthouse closing in on him, Jack decided to step outside, searching for a simpler place he'd never been to before, hoping to regain his composure before continuing his day. When he entered Morning Light Cafe, a small, quiet coffee shop on a street corner, Jack felt an overwhelming contrast to the luxurious world he was used to. Simple wooden tables, natural light flooding the space, and the soft laughter of ordinary patrons made Jack feel slightly out of place. Yet rather than easing him, this change in atmosphere only fueled his irritation, as if everything was against him that day. Jack adjusted his jacket, placed his expensive phone on the table, and loudly ordered a special coffee, trying to maintain his authoritative demeanor despite being in a modest cafe. To Jack, elegance and perfection were standards anyone serving him should meet, regardless of the place or people. But Morning Light was far from the places Jack usually frequented. There were no glimmering lights, no luxurious seating arrangements, rustic wooden tables, hand-drawn art by local artists on the walls, and natural light streaming through large glass windows gave the cafe a warm, simple vibe, a value Jack didn't see as worthwhile. Amelia Daniels, a petite black waitress with warm eyes and a friendly smile, quickly took Jack's order. Today was a busy day, and she served each customer with a smile and attentive care. Having grown used to dealing with tiredness, Amelia knew every customer could have a bad day. She had encountered all kinds of customers, from rude to polite, but Amelia rarely let a client's rudeness disturb her calm. While Amelia carefully prepared Jack's coffee, he kept looking at his watch, muttering irritably, and tapping his phone screen impatiently. "What kind of service is this?" he muttered, his face showing clear displeasure, indifferent to the confused glances from other customers. When Amelia returned with his coffee, a special latte he requested hot and unsweetened, she gently placed it on the table and said, "Sorry for the wait. I prepared it just as you asked. Have a nice day." Jack barely glanced at her in response. He picked up the coffee and took a sip. Instantly, he grimaced and placed the cup back on the table with a loud clink, drawing attention from everyone in the cafe. "This is supposed to be hot coffee? You think I came here to drink this cold excuse for a drink?" His voice was filled with scorn, so loud that some patrons paused their conversations to look over. Amelia maintained her composure, giving him a soft smile and replying, "I'm sorry. I'll make a fresh cup for you right away." She was used to apologizing and handling tense situations, but Jack didn't give her the chance to fix her work. "No need," Jack cut her off, his voice icy. "Don't you know how to make coffee? It's your job." His eyes bore into hers without a hint of empathy or politeness, only disdain. Jack continued with a sarcastic tone. "Should I remind you that this cafe is a joke, right? Who serves coffee like this?" Amelia stood in shock, taking a deep breath to keep calm, though she felt deeply hurt. Before she could say anything, Jack grabbed his coffee and, in an act of sheer anger, threw it toward her. The hot coffee splashed onto Amelia's shirt and arm, causing her to gasp in pain. The cafe fell into stunned silence, shock evident on every customer's face. Amelia stood still, holding her scalded arm. She could feel the hot coffee seeping into her skin, leaving a burning sensation, but the physical pain paled compared to the humiliation she just endured. Jack, however, showed no sign of remorse or acknowledgement of wrongdoing. He got up, picked up his phone and wallet, and walked past Amelia indifferently, as though she were nothing more than an unimportant obstacle. Several patrons nearby held their breath, watching in silence, though anger filled their eyes. A couple sitting nearby whispered to each other, "That's Jack Weston, right? Can you believe a billionaire behaves like that?" A younger woman took out her phone and quickly started recording the scene. "Unbelievable, and he's famous for his charitable work," she whispered to her friend. Other patrons began sharing what they witnessed on social media, criticizing Jack's behavior. The atmosphere in the cafe grew heavy, with disappointed and angry eyes focused on Jack. He ignored their gazes and coldly walked out, leaving behind a heavy silence and Amelia with a scalded arm and a bruised sense of dignity. As soon as the door closed behind Jack, a few patrons rushed to Amelia's side. Someone handed her a napkin, another gently took her hand to comfort her, while others just looked on with sympathy. Amelia smiled weakly, trying to hold back her tears. Although she was used to dealing with difficult customers as a server, she had never experienced such public and intense humiliation. On social media, images and short videos of Jack Weston aggressively throwing coffee at Amelia spread at lightning speed. Within hours, the story had gone viral, stirring shock not only among the online community, but also across major news outlets. The clips captured Jack's cold, arrogant look as he left the cafe, leaving Amelia with burns and humiliation, a clear testament to the true character of a man once celebrated as a philanthropic hero. Public outrage followed immediately. Those who once admired Jack as a symbol of compassion felt let down and angry. The stark contrast between the polished image Jack had crafted for years and his rude, unfeeling behavior stunned people. Comments of condemnation and disapproval flooded in. "This is our philanthropic hero? Treating a server like that without any remorse?" one user wrote. "I used to admire him, but now I'm deeply disappointed," shared another. People who had encountered Jack or heard about his past behavior also began to speak up. A server at a restaurant, who had seen Jack berate staff over a dish that was a few minutes late, shared her story, along with blurry photos of him at events, his face lacking a smile, only bearing a look of contempt. Gradually, the public realized that Jack might not be as kind-hearted and generous as he portrayed himself to be, in public and in the media. The tabloid press quickly picked up and amplified the story. They ran eye-catching headlines such as "Jack Weston, the philanthropic facade, and the ugly truth behind a spilled coffee," and "Billionaire throws coffee." At Waitress, is this our hero? In each article, Jack's image was peeled back, no longer the perfect one people once saw. Reporters began to dig into old stories about Jack, from employee complaints to covered-up rude events. Even candid photos showing Jack's dismissive or indifferent demeanor toward those around him resurfaced, all seeming to confirm that Jack's glamour had always been just a mask. Jack's actions sparked a wave of simmering resentment in society as many began to realize that the wealthy and powerful often use their riches to mask flaws and negative behavior. This incident became not just a story about a billionaire and a waitress, but a symbol of social injustice and unchecked abuse of power. Journalists and activists began calling for an investigation into Jack's charitable activities, suspecting that all his work might merely be a publicity stunt rather than an expression of genuine humanity. Meanwhile, Amelia became a symbol of patience and resilience. A group of people created a page in support of her, expressing their sympathy and encouraging her to move past this incident. The online community flooded Amelia with messages of encouragement, with many sharing their own stories of enduring disrespect in the workplace and how they dealt with difficult customers. Some encouraged Amelia to share her story, exposing Jack's true character and inspiring other workers. Within days, the page supporting Amelia attracted thousands of members, and donations poured in, reaching tens of thousands of dollars to help her with medical treatment for her burns and to support her in the future. People not only offered words but took action, hoping she could overcome the trauma and use this painful experience to create something better. Public anger grew even stronger as Jack's business partners and brands he represented began to respond officially. Under public pressure, a series of luxury brands announced the cancellation of contracts and termination of collaborations with Jack. A famous fashion house stated, "We can no longer associate ourselves with someone whose behavior starkly contradicts the values we strive to promote." Charitable organizations Jack had donated to and been a key figure in also announced they would reconsider their relationship with him, as his image no longer aligned with the values they represented. Facing an ever-growing backlash, Jack tried to remain silent, believing the storm of public opinion would pass as it had before. However, the story was no longer just an isolated incident. It had become a symbol of social injustice, and the public showed no signs of letting it go. The image of the philanthropic hero Jack Weston had painstakingly built over decades vanished in an instant. Now, whenever his name appeared in the media, it was no longer in praise and admiration, but in harsh criticism and condemnation. Major newspapers also began analyzing and dissecting Jack's past philanthropic speeches, pointing out inconsistencies between his words and his actions. Articles titled "Charity, Deed, or Stunt," and "Jack Weston, Kind on Camera, Heartless Behind the Scenes" flooded news sites, pushing Jack into an inescapable corner. Jack Weston's image crumbled entirely before the public's eyes. This wasn't just a fleeting incident, but one that severely damaged his reputation and career, seemingly beyond repair. Jack began to feel the pressure as each partner, each organization, and even each close friend distanced themselves. Public anger spread quickly, like fire across dry grass, and although Jack was accustomed to criticism, he had never felt so utterly alone. Within days, numerous advertising contracts were terminated. Luxury brands quickly announced the end of their association with him, from fashion lines to renowned fragrance products. A large financial firm, where Jack once served as an advisor, also announced it would withdraw from all partnerships with him. Their press release emphasized that our company's values are incompatible with Mr. Weston's behavior and lifestyle. This statement spread widely across news outlets, highlighting the stark contrast between Jack's public image and his real character. Not only business partners, but even charities, where Jack had donated and been praised for his generosity, publicly severed ties. A children's care organization, which he had funded for nearly a decade, announced they would return all of Jack's donations and wanted no further connection with him. Other organizations followed suit, including a healthcare fund Jack had personally advocated for and funded. With each severed tie, Jack realized that the career and reputation he had built over many years had disappeared overnight. Jack's world became colder and emptier. Friends and close relationships that once surrounded him now avoided him. In the days before the incident, Jack could call anyone among the elite, people who would gladly meet him at high-end restaurants or five-star hotel lounges. But now he found that no one answered his calls, and his pleas for help went ignored. A longtime friend, when Jack tried to reach out, left him a simple message. "Sorry, Jack, but I can't be involved in this situation." Not only partners and friends, but Jack's own family was also deeply affected by the scandal. His parents, who had once been proud of their successful and generous son, now felt hurt and embarrassed. Jack's father called him, speaking briefly but filled with disappointment. "Your mother and I need time to think. You've let us down too much." The disappointment in his parents' voices made Jack feel even more despondent, realizing he had not only lost public admiration, but also the respect of his own family. Even Jack's marriage began to suffer serious strain. His wife, who had always been by his side at every charity gala and major event, now avoided direct conversations with him. She told him, "I need some time to think about our future." Jack felt everything slipping away, not only his reputation, but the relationships and love he had once thought would last forever. As his days of isolation stretched on, Jack realized he no longer possessed anything truly lasting. One by one, every partner, every organization, and even close friends turned away. His phone calls gradually decreased, while emails rejecting invitations and partnership cancellations increased. The image of Jack Weston, a powerful billionaire with a heart of gold who once captivated and was admired everywhere, was now just a fading memory. Meanwhile, Amelia continued to gain overwhelming support from the community. After that painful incident, she was no longer just an ordinary waitress, but had become a symbol of resilience, representing the strength of those often overlooked and underestimated in society. Shortly after the video of the incident went viral, the online community quickly showed support and encouraged Amelia to overcome her hardship. Messages poured in from all over, from workers like her to people she had never met who were moved by her story. A group of people created a fundraising page for Amelia, not only to cover medical expenses for her burn, but also to help her recover emotionally and start anew. Within days, donations reached tens of thousands of dollars, along with thousands of heartfelt messages sent her way. People didn't just donate money, they added personal notes and shared their own stories, expressing their respect for Amelia's patience and self-respect. Amelia was both touched and surprised by the outpouring of support. She had never imagined her story would resonate so deeply with so many people. Each message, each shared story she read, seemed to soothe the wound inside her, helping her regain faith in people's kindness. One day, while sitting at home, reading each message on the fundraising page, Amelia received an unexpected call from an old friend, Rachel, who hadn't contacted her in years. Rachel said, "I'm so proud of you, Amelia. You've handled all this with such courage." The incident also caught the attention of the media. Amelia received interview requests from several local television stations, and journalists wanted to know her thoughts on the matter. In one interview, Amelia spoke not only about the pain and humiliation she had endured, but also shared her thoughts on the struggles she and other workers face daily. "Sometimes we feel invisible and disrespected. But what the community has done for me after this incident shows that kindness and fairness are still everywhere." Amelia's heartfelt words touched the hearts of thousands, and many others began to share their own experiences of unfair treatment in the workplace. Some people even called for the establishment of an organization to protect the rights and provide support for low-income workers like Amelia, ensuring they would be respected and shielded from abuses of power. With the support and trust of the community, Amelia gradually found the motivation to turn this painful event into something positive. One afternoon, she sat down with her best friend, Maria, who suggested that Amelia use the donation money to do something meaningful. "You've always said you wanted to help people struggling in jobs like yours, Amelia," Maria said. "Maybe this is your chance to make that dream a reality." Maria's suggestion got Amelia thinking seriously about setting up a community support center for workers who lack basic rights. The messages of encouragement and empathetic stories from the community helped Amelia regain her faith, not just in others, but in herself. The idea of a community support center began to take shape in her mind. Amelia wanted to create a space where workers could find assistance when treated unfairly, gain skills, and have a voice in society. And so, from a victim of indifference, Amelia embarked on a journey to inspire and support many others. Amelia's resilience and compassion attracted not only community support, but also served as a powerful reminder of social justice. While Jack faced isolation and public criticism, Amelia, the very person he had once looked down on, was becoming a symbol of courage and unity. Her story spread far and wide, and the image of a small woman rising from pain to build something meaningful for the community left Jack reflecting on the stark contrast between them. The public's outrage was no longer something Jack could ignore or assume would pass. Instead, it became a constant reminder, rekindling values he once lost. Alone in his spacious, cold penthouse, Jack no longer had a packed schedule, glamorous events, or calls from powerful partners. It was just him and the empty, silent space. Jack sat, for hours, staring into the void as a growing sense of emptiness crept into his mind. The room, once adorned with luxury items and trophies he'd accumulated throughout his career, now felt meaningless. He realized he had lost something far more significant than fame or money: his self-respect and a genuine connection with others. Memories of that fateful morning at Morning Light Cafe rushed back like a powerful wave, forcing him to confront feelings of regret and guilt. Jack began to recall his childhood, growing up in a humble working-class family. As a boy, Jack often helped his mother in her small grocery store. He remembered warm evenings when his mother would remind him that no matter how tough things got, treating people kindly was always most important. He remembered that he was once a boy who cared about others, who understood hard work and respected those around him. But over time, success had transformed him into someone else: cold, harsh, and always putting ambition and prestige above all else. The more he reflected, the more Jack realized that the rudeness and contempt he'd shown Amelia wasn't just a momentary reaction. It was the result of a lifestyle in which he had grown used to seeing himself at the center, abusing power without concern for its impact on others. The image of Amelia in the media, strong, resilient, and full of compassion, stood in stark contrast to him. She had been humiliated by him, yet instead of being crushed, she turned that painful experience into a drive to help other workers. Feelings of emptiness and remorse began to take over Jack as he read articles about Amelia's plans to establish a community support center. She had not only moved past her pain, but was using her experience to create something better, something bigger for the community. Each article about Amelia's bravery, every image of her working with the community to build a support center for vulnerable people, reminded Jack not only of his mistreatment of her, but also of the years he had deceived himself about the true value of charity that he once praised. In the quiet of his penthouse, Jack looked at his charitable collections and humanitarian awards, once displayed as proof of his golden heart. But now they seemed like faded, distant images. The award ceremonies and meticulously written speeches that were meant to showcase his kindness were now mere blurry memories. Behind all that glory, Jack gradually realized that it was all a facade, a means to maintain his status and image in society. Thinking of Amelia, Jack felt ashamed and embarrassed. He knew that a simple apology would never be enough to mend the hurt he had caused. She was not just an anonymous waitress. She was a symbol for workers, those he had once dismissed as inferior, but who held a dignity and compassion he lacked. Jack began to understand that without a genuine transformation from within, any attempt at an apology would be hollow, and no one, not even himself, could forgive the person he had become. One night, Jack sat alone in the dark room. He no longer thought about salvaging his reputation or regaining his status. Instead, he began writing a letter to Amelia. In the letter, he acknowledged all his mistakes, from arrogance to disregard for others. He confessed that he had lost his kindness and humanity and had become someone he no longer recognized. With each word, he tried to express his deep and genuine regret, not as a famous billionaire, but as a human being trying to reclaim lost values. He didn't just apologize to Amelia, he also expressed his desire to find himself again. He wrote about his awakening during those lonely days, about the emptiness and guilt that forced him to confront his true self. Jack knew he couldn't expect Amelia to forgive him immediately, but he wanted her to understand that he was willing to take responsibility for everything he had done. He also expressed his hope to help, to become part of the community center she was building, not to seek public forgiveness, but to prove to himself that he could change and become better. After sending the letter, Jack felt a part of the weight lifted off his shoulders. He knew this was just the first step on a long road of redemption, and that the journey ahead would not be easy. But for the first time in years, Jack felt a glimmer of hope. He understood that this journey wasn't about restoring his reputation. It was about finding his true self, the boy he once was, someone who knew how to love and respect others before the allure of fame and fortune clouded his vision. With this thought, Jack decided to meet Amelia in person. He knew he couldn't rely solely on letters of apology, but needed to take sincere action to prove his remorse. One early morning, Jack walked into Morning Light Cafe, the very place where his actions had recently turned his life upside down. Gone was the polished, powerful billionaire exterior. Jack dressed simply in a sweater and jeans. He no longer carried the image of a famous person, but appeared as an awkward yet determined man seeking redemption. As he entered, he immediately felt the curious and wary glances from regular cafe patrons. Some recognized him, but no one greeted him or acted friendly. These looks made Jack realize that to regain respect and trust from the community, he would have to start with the smallest steps. Jack looked around the cafe, searching for Amelia. He saw her sitting in a corner, focused on a file about the community center she was planning to build. With each step toward her, his heartbeat quickened, not out of fear, but from the anxiety of wondering whether he deserved forgiveness. When Jack approached, Amelia looked up and recognized him. Her expression registered brief surprise, then settled into a guarded, almost indifferent look, seemingly to shield herself from any unwanted emotions. "Ms. Amelia," Jack began, his voice low and slightly shaky, "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I wanted to apologize in person. These past days, I've realized how cruel and disrespectful I was to you, and I take full responsibility." Amelia looked at Jack for a moment, then calmly replied, "I read your letter. Your apology might be sincere, but do you really understand what people like us go through? It's the feeling of being looked down upon, considered less valuable just because of our jobs." Her voice was steady, but carried a strength Jack had never noticed before. Jack nodded, refraining from making excuses and simply listening. He knew this was not the time to justify himself, but to accept and understand the harm he had caused. "Amelia," he said, meeting her gaze, "I understand that a mere apology isn't enough. I've lived too long in a world where arrogance and status made me believe I had the right to hurt others. But now I realize that no one has that right, no matter who they are." Amelia observed him for a long moment, then said, "I can forgive you, Jack, but forgiveness doesn't mean things will go back to the way they were. You need to prove that your change is real, coming from a sincere place and not just to save face." Jack nodded, grateful that Amelia hadn't dismissed him. "I understand, and I don't expect you or anyone else to believe me immediately, but I want to start somewhere, and I want to work with you to help those I once overlooked, once dismissed. I read about the community center you're building, and I want to contribute, not just with money, but with my effort." Amelia hesitated for a moment, but then agreed. "If you truly want to help, I won't turn you away, but I'll let you prove your change through your actions." She stood up and added, "We have a lot of work that needs hands at the center. If you're ready to really work, maybe that's where you can start." And so Jack began working at the community center Amelia was building. On his first day, he wasn't the prominent sponsor or a celebrated personality, just a new volunteer. No one praised him or gave him special attention. Instead, he was assigned simple tasks like organizing files, cleaning meeting rooms, and welcoming people seeking assistance. With each passing day, Jack began to understand the meaning of the work he was doing and the people he had once dismissed. Every time he saw Amelia, he felt a sense of gratitude and respect. She was not only the one who had forgiven him, but also the one who gave him the chance to start over. In these small tasks, Jack found a simple yet genuine joy, knowing he was contributing to something meaningful. Gradually, Jack started to change from within. He no longer cared about his reputation or sought attention. He learned to help quietly, sincerely. Through days of work and witnessing Amelia's dedication, Jack realized that serving others was not a temporary duty, but a path for him to make amends, not just with Amelia, but with himself. From then on, he began going to the community center regularly, performing humble tasks like cleaning, sorting donations, and welcoming those in need. No longer a powerful billionaire or charity hero admired by the public, Jack was now just a volunteer willing to do whatever was needed. At first, the other staff and volunteers at the center were cautious and skeptical of Jack. To them, he was just a stranger from a glamorous world, and they wondered if his motives were truly sincere. But as the days passed, Jack's consistent efforts gradually shifted their perspective. He didn't flaunt or try to draw attention, but quietly worked and learned from those around him. Little by little, he found a genuine joy in seemingly small tasks that carried deep meaning. Amelia began to notice the real changes in how Jack treated others. She observed that whenever a new person arrived at the center, Jack always greeted them warmly, listening instead of showing disdain or distance as he once had. The people who sought assistance at the center were mostly laborers, families in hardship, or individuals who had experienced many challenges in life. Jack realized that they didn't just need material support, but also compassion and respect, things he had once neglected. Each story, Each grateful glance strengthened Jack's resolve on his path of atonement and self-renewal. One day, while organizing donated items in the storage room, Jack encountered an older woman searching for clothes for her child. She seemed hesitant and somewhat embarrassed to receive free items. Jack approached, gently chatting with her and helping her pick out what she needed. By the end, the woman teared up, thanking him, saying his kindness had made her feel valued. Jack smiled, a warm feeling spreading in his heart, as he realized that sometimes a small gesture carried more weight than words. The more Jack worked at the center, the more he saw himself change. The personal needs and concerns he once deemed important now seemed insignificant. He began to truly appreciate the value of genuine help, not for show or public recognition, but to bring something good to the lives of those who needed it. Each day, Jack felt less prideful and more connected to the very people he once disregarded. Amelia continued to observe Jack from a distance, noticing each small change in his actions and his relentless efforts. Though she had initially given him a chance because of the remorse she saw in his eyes and words, she now saw that Jack was genuinely living for something more meaningful. She saw a new person, one who had once been arrogant and dismissive, now humble and fully committed. Over time, not only the staff but also the community began to accept Jack's presence. Regular visitors to the center saw Jack diligently working, no longer with the appearance of a distant billionaire. They saw him as a friend, ready to listen, help, and respect each person regardless of their situation. Jack's story of transformation spread through the community, and even those who had once criticized him gradually began to see him not as someone seeking forgiveness, but as someone rediscovering life's true values. Each day at the center became a new lesson for